Welcome to Max and the Supply Chain Heroes. What kind of value do you think can an inside sales proactively deliver on the phone?
I think they can deliver every bit as much value as the field salesperson. They're more like the field salesperson than they are like the customer service rep.
Have fun. Today I'm talking to Jonathan Bein from Real Marketing Results. It's not a typically supply chain topic, but he had a study where the results showed that 35% of the customers don't want to have any visits by field sales anymore. And I think this has some implications for the relationship between customer, distributor, and manufacturer. And I think it's interesting to listen to a short episode about what is maybe the future in inside sales and field sales for a distributor. So have fun. And as always, if you have feedback, just write me an email at max@supplychain-heroes.com. Thank you. Have fun. So welcome to a new episode. Today I'm sitting here in Boulder, Colorado, and my today's guest is Jonathan Bein of Real Marketing Results. Please start and explain a little bit about yourself and about Real Marketing Results.
Max, thanks for including me on your podcast here. Real Results Marketing is a company devoted almost exclusively to working with distributors. And the broad goal we have is to help create a strategic marketing capability that in turn makes marketing into a profit center. The way we do that is really kind of two paths. One is working down the customer research, competitive research, value proposition path, which feeds into strategy. Another is working down the analytics path, feeding into integrated marketing programs, e-commerce, whether it's proactive inside sales, digital marketing, good old-fashioned print marketing, e-commerce combination. So those are really kind of the two paths of the things that we do that help distributors make marketing into a profit center.
Okay, and I personally follow your content a lot, and I would recommend it to the listeners that they should do so, because I think that it's a very down-to-earth approach that you always mention, and I can imagine it's working, and I always try to follow your stuff. And that is the reason why I came along to read an article by you. It was called The 5 Risks Distributors Take When They Don't Know Their Customers. And I want to go through all 5 of them, but I want to emphasize on 2 especially in the end, because we are interested in changes in the supply chain and between the connection of the manufacturers, distributors, and customers. And this will be what we focus on last. But can you at least describe what are the 5 risks distributors take sometimes?
Well, the broad problem is that most distributors have a limited understanding of how their customers want to shop and buy. They tend to default to the idea that field sales is the primary way that customers want to buy. You, of course, know that that's changing. And so the key is to find out for your customer base, how do they want to find, research, evaluate products from you, meaning shopping, separate from how they want to buy, meaning purchasing, ordering, or transacting. And what we find is that there's a lot of misinformation or bad assumptions that people are making. So the risks that people have of not knowing what their customers are wanting for shopping and buying is they could invest in the wrong e-commerce platform, either one that's way too big for what they need,
okay,
or way too small for what they need.
And how distributors should start this kind of evaluation, what they are, in which direction they want to go?
I think they need to start by a combination of qualitative and quantitative voice of customer research. So that means really finding out, how do your customers want to shop? We find often that the top 3 ways that they like to shop, and it can vary by customer base, but the top 3 ways are going to a search engine, going to a manufacturer website, or going to a distributor website. But there's other ways that they might want to shop. There's another 6 or 7 ways they might want to shop. And some customer bases are much more traditional. So shopping by talking to people is actually going to be ahead of the digital methods that I mentioned. And same thing with buying. Some customers are very focused on buying through e-business or e-procurement or e-commerce, and others are much more happy to talk to a rep or to give a purchase order. So.
Okay, and what is the next risk some distributors take?
I think the next one is by not knowing what your customers want, you could be having either too much or too little branch infrastructure.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah, because branches are expensive, right?
Branches are expensive, but so we have 11 branches, and we always think where should we expand and what we should do. So what do you think? Because many companies here in the US have dozens and maybe hundreds of branches. So what do you think is the actual state and what is the trend?
Well, I think the trend, if we look at, for example, Grainger, they're consolidating branches pretty rapidly. So I think that the trend is this idea that face-to-face interaction is going to diminish. It's going to become less. And therefore, there might be it might be the same number of branches, but with smaller infrastructure in each branch. Right.
Okay, meaning with or without stock, or just as sales representatives? Or?
All of those are possibilities. I mean, again, you might maintain the same number of locations, but the nature of the location may vary. They may vary by stocking, may vary by the number of counter people, number of field salespeople, or there actually may be consolidation of branches. And in some cases, some distributors may conclude, you know what, we actually need to expand branches. But I think the assumption that field sales is the primary mechanism is a bad assumption, and it needs to be inspected as we start to think about what is the size of our field sales team and what is the size of our branch infrastructure.
Okay. A common friend of us, Tom Gale, he's also making software to analyze where is potential for building up new branches. So yeah, I think every company has to find his own destiny and in which direction they want to go. So, but to summarize, you think that in total that the number of branches will decrease, or at least the structure will be more centralized?
I think it's going to move towards centralization. I think, let's put it another way, I think the most successful companies will move towards centralization.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yesterday, I've seen a presentation from Restaurant, and they have 6 distribution centers, I think. And they said yesterday they would need about 10 distribution centers to serve full USA within next day service. Okay. So just to realize how big the country is, because in Germany we ship everything overnight. So
interesting. Yes. Yeah. Well, and then also though, I mean, it sounds like they're expanding from a multi-regional presence to a national presence.
Yeah.
Right. And that's why they need more infrastructure.
Yeah. Okay. What is the next risk you see for some distributors?
Well, I think that if we've sort of combined right-sizing the sales staff, right-sizing the branch infrastructure, I think the next risk would be making investments in the infrastructure in the wrong order. So you may not need to make a huge investment in e-commerce. There may be other things that you need in your sales and marketing infrastructure. Maybe CRM needs to come before e-commerce, depending on the kind of customer base you have. Or perhaps you need to be doing something with marketing automation. But I think it has to be driven by data rather than an idea. Right?
Yeah, I fully agree.
Yeah.
Because the biggest fault is if you assume that because I don't like doing stuff like this, our customers do not like it either. Decisions shouldn't make with the gut feelings. It should always done with surveys or at least with some data points. Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen. We've had 2 customers. One who thought that their customers had more of a relationship focus, and it turned out that their customers were more transactional. And then we had another customer, it was the exact opposite. They thought their customers were more transactional, they were more relationship oriented. Okay. And that's a big thing to miss in terms of what are we doing with the size of our field sales team, what are we doing with e-commerce. do we even need as much field sales? Can we be moving to proactive inside sales? Really finding out how your customer base wants to interact can save you thousands or millions of dollars, and it can make you also thousands of millions of dollars.
Yeah, I can imagine. Before we come to the sales staff, I would be interested, what do you think about, because you called it opportunities to grow with mid-sized customers. Why do you think that especially mid-sized customers are undervalued or are underrepresented?
Well, in a way, we've seen this again and again. We've looked at literally billions of dollars of transaction data from our customers. We do analytics before we recommend programs. And if you look at the top 10% of the customers, those are almost all field sales assigned accounts, right? And often the second 10% of your customers are field sales assigned. But what happens with those customers is they don't get worked by field sales, right?
Okay.
I mean, the field sales will take a call from them, but they won't make a call to them, right?
Okay, so not proactive,
They're not
reactive.
Proactive, yeah, it's very reactive, yes. And that second 10% of your customers is probably, depending on your industry sector, 6 to 8, maybe even 12 points higher margin, right? They're also much higher churn right now than that top decile. And they're higher churn because they're not getting attention or love or service really from anybody, from your competitors or from you.
Okay, because they're too small.
Because they're too small.
Okay. Do you think good email marketing campaigns or other marketing campaigns could help here to give some love to these mid-sized customers?
It can, but then it has to be personalized. So what we like to see is the combination of a proactive inside sales force with a marketing automation solution, so that they're sending relevant content and they're getting that personal service from a proactive inside salesperson. So the combination of the two is powerful.
Okay. One question. The problem with personalization or with good curated content for mid-sized customers is that usually you don't know them so well. So what kind of ideas can you give to the listeners to improve that?
Well, I would say specifically for the second 10% of your customers, you have enough data on each of those customers to personalize. I would say when you get below that second 10%, then it gets really hard.
Okay.
Right?
Okay. So that's good differentiation between the segments.
Yeah, there really is. I mean, so typically the first 10% is 65 to 90% of your business. The second 10% is 8 to 12% of your business. And then the rest of it is, maybe another 10 or 12%. I mean, the other 80% is 10 or 12% of your business. So you have to treat each of these separately. That third segment, the bottom 80%, you have to look at all of that data to gather something that's meaningful.
Okay.
Yeah.
We now come to the point what I think is very interesting. That is, you mentioned today during your presentation that 35% of the customers do not want to have any visit of a field sales. And we were discussing a little bit about that topic. And I think this is a fundamental change also for the relationship between manufacturers, distributors, and customers, because the demand of the customer is changing. So maybe you can line out a bit some details first about a good separation between field sales and inside sales, and what is a good mix for a distributor and what to think about.
So when I think about what's a good mix for field sales versus inside sales, field sales can really actively work about 25 to 50 accounts. They may have 200 accounts, but I would say 50 is even on the high end.
50, I think so too.
Yeah, 50 is on the high end. So a good inside salesperson, once they get up to speed, once they get to full efficiency, can manage 200 to 300 accounts. Now they're smaller, right? So in US dollars, depending on the distributor, that might be a $10,000 to a $25,000 account.
Yeah.
But it's not a $5,000 account. You're not gonna get a positive ROI. So the 200 to 300 is a good mix. Your effective cost per call goes way down. I think at the first or last year's sales GPS, somebody went through the calculations on cost per call. A field sales call could be $75 to $100 cost.
Yeah.
Right? And the inside sales call could be $10 to $12 or $14 per contact. So getting them up to speed, getting them the right accounts, getting them the accounts in that second 10%, roughly, is the move to make this work. We've seen it happen where the management will say, here, take these house accounts. Here, take these lousy house accounts and make something happen. And guess what? Nothing happens.
Yeah, sure.
You can't, because there's just not enough dollars in those accounts. So, and once the inside sales program gets going well, it can eat its way up market. It might even take the very bottom of the first 10%.
So I think the biggest task for distribution as a part of the supply chain is to really add value for the customer. And what kind of value do you think can an inside sales proactively deliver on the phone?
I think they can deliver every bit as much value as the field salesperson.
Okay.
And so in our view of the proactive inside salesperson, they're more like the field salesperson than they are like the customer service rep. The only difference between them and the field sales rep is they don't get in a car and drive. So, in the same way that a field sales rep doesn't do quotations, he has a customer service rep do that. Inside sales rep has the same type of thing. So our view is that the inside sales rep, the proactive, is more like the field sales than like the customer service rep. And in fact, customer service reps, when they try to become inside sales reps, typically don't succeed very often because it's the wrong mentality for the customer service reps are service oriented. They're gatherers, right? The sales reps, whether it's inside or field sales, are hunters. It's about me in a certain sense, right?
Yeah.
So, so customer service reps don't typically make the transition very well.
Okay, I can understand because it's a different mindset. It's a different work style. So what I'm asking myself, when 35% of our customers don't want an outside field or a field sales visit, how do I identify these 35%? Would you ask? Or
That's a good question. How would you identify them? Well, this is related to the question you asked me earlier today.
Yeah.
So it tends to be more the older, tends to be more on the procurement side.
Older employees
older employees.
Okay.
Oddly, as much as we hear that the younger generation likes to meet face-to-face less, in our research, they're more enthusiastic about meeting with a field sales rep.
Okay, because maybe they can learn more, or there's still a need to learn?
I think that's a lot of it. That's my sense, is that they want to learn and they're more enthusiastic, and the old guys are looking to retirement, and they don't want to take the time to meet with yet another field sales rep. But also, as I mentioned before, that 35% is an average. So we looked at one customer base where they were very, very attached to their field sales reps. 96% of their customers wanted a field sales rep visit at least once a month. Okay. So if we look at that average 35%, and I'm giving you one data point that's 96%, that means we've got some where it's 40 and 45 and 50% who don't want to see a field sales rep. Yeah. Right?
Yeah, for me, I'm wondering, maybe we can discuss this later on a little bit, how really to identify the customers. What contact the customers is really wishing or demanding? Yeah.
I think they're demanding that you impart value. Yeah. I mean, there may be some nice relationship there. I go to sports games with you and your family, so there might be some relationship thing. But beyond the relationship, there's got to be value added. And this also goes back to the idea and death of the B2B salesperson, that the field sales reps who will still be employed 5 years from now are adding consultative value. They're imparting real worthwhile information to their customers.
Okay. Maybe two last things, because you mentioned that you have been to a value proposition workshop yesterday in Arizona, and if you want to be part in the supply chain, you have to add value. So what would you suggest for distributors, but maybe also for other parts of the supply chain, how to create your value proposition, or how to describe your value proposition? What would your approach would be?
So this is for the workshop that we ran for this company and that we've run for others. there are three perspectives on your value proposition. There's what is it that you do really well, hopefully good, better, best, maybe even best in a way that nobody could catch you. Like that would be possible for a manufacturer, right? They could have a product that is so superior that nobody could catch it. So what is it that you do really well? What is it that's important to customers? And what is unclaimed by your competitors? What's the position that's unclaimed? Ideally, we want to find some set of attributes that you do really well, that are important to your customers, that are unclaimed by competitors. In practice, we certainly in the channel, we rarely find a pure position where, say, you have some value-added service that's the best and customers care about and nobody's claiming. Usually there's some trade-off that you have to make. But the first thing is to understand, if you're a distributor, your core services, your value-added services, your benefits, to understand those three things for each of the core services, value-added services, and benefits. And then to say, given where these things sit or stand, which are the ones that we're really going to focus on? So if we look at 8 core services and 6 value-added services and 5 benefits, which are the things that we're going to select to start to craft a value proposition? Okay. And then there's the messaging problem. How do we get this across to the market in our different places where we touch the customer? And also, what do we need to do internally to strengthen or to fortify that value proposition, our ability to deliver that value proposition?
Okay, so you look at what you're good in, you look at what the customer wants, and you look what your competition is maybe not good in, and then you focus on 3 to 5 topics and work that out.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, so what you're not seeing is that in the background there is a great fire drill prepared, so we maybe have 2 minutes left before the sound alarm goes on. So we are now coming to the last very important question. Do you think that the Denver Nuggets make it to the conference finals next year or not?
Emphatically.
Okay, that's awesome. So great having you. Thank you, and see you the next time.
Thank you so much, Max. Pleasure.